Hello Internet, my name is Solka, and today on the Dungeon channel I want to show you guys how I made these neat spider cocoons or spider eggs. They're pretty perfect to use in any drow or spider infested game. I made them for a special session I made up for my friends in our... I won't give it away because they might be watching, but for a special session I made up for them. They're pretty simple to make, and I hope you like them. If you do, please like, share, and subscribe. Without too much further ado, let's get on to the video. In order to get started, we're going to need some materials. Firstly, we need some 1.5-inch bases, some construction sand, a paper plate to pour the sand into, a cake decoration tool, or some marbles if you don't have a cake decoration tool. You will also need some silkworms, or more accurately, some silkworm cocoons. I'm going to use them to make the spider pods themselves. My little girls raise these silkworms every year, so I keep the eggs and raise a new batch every time spring comes by. You will also need some watered down PVA in a ratio of 1:1 with some water, a simple brush, a dripper to drip the PVA onto the base, and that's basically it. Clear the deck for action and we're good to go. Now the first thing to do is to cover the base with the first layer of construction sand. To do this, I use the brush to spread the glue evenly along the base, and I try and keep the glue on the surface of the base without going over the edges. If you do, nothing horrible has happened, just clean the edge and then spread the sand over the wet base. Now take your brush and just fill in the edges where you might have missed a spot and sprinkle some more sand over it. Once you have an even spread of sand on the base, I start spreading a thicker layer of sand over it. That way I get some more surface to work with when I try and make the indentations for where the pods are supposed to fit in. Trying not to put pebbles on it that are too big, that way you get an even texture. Once you have enough sand, spray the entire thing with some soapy water and use the dripper to drip some watered down PVA onto the sand. Once the PVA dries, this will make the entire base extremely hard and durable. And of course, we'll make it retain the shape we're going to give it with this cake decoration tool. Now, take the cake decoration tool and press it into the wet sand. This will create the indentations for the spider cocoons or pods. Even better yet, take some marbles and press them into the wet sand. And you can leave these in place to dry with the sand and just remove them once the sand has dried. Now, once the sand has dried, just take some black matte spray paint and black bomb the entire thing. Once you've black bombed the base, use some watered down burnt sienna to overbrush the entire base. Burnt sienna gives the base a more earthy tone, which is very correct for sedimentary rock caves, which is the way I imagine caves in my setting. Once this is done, take some dark gray and start dry brushing the base. Once you've dry brushed it in dark gray, start going over it with lighter and lighter shades of gray in a dry brush technique. That way you accentuate the texture of the rocks. Make sure that you only brush from a single direction. This will preserve the shadows on your base and not saturate the base in grays and bright colors. Keep doing this till you get to using basically white, which you only use at the very edges of the rocks. Now that you've got the shade that you want, take the Silkworm cocoons, separate them, and cut off any excess silk that you don't want on your base. I use 3 cocoons per base because I don't want it to over decorate the base. I want to leave some more room for some skulls and the spider silk itself. Then I take some super glue. I glue the cocoons to the base and just hold them till everything is dry. This should take a couple of seconds at most. And then I move on to the next base. Once the cocoons are dry, I drip some silicone glue onto a piece of paper, and using a toothpick, I dab at the glue and then bring it to the base, dab it to the bottom of the base, and start stretching out strands of glue up to the cocoons. Using this method, I create thicker webbings, which are perfect as a base for my web. They make my web stronger and more visible, which is perfect. To make sure that the strands stick to the cocoon, every time I touch it to a surface, I twist it lightly. This stretches the glue to the surface that I'm touching and makes it stick harder. Be sure to avoid going over the same place again and again and again in straight lines. This will give your web a very mechanical feel. Try and stretch it in diagonal lines and across each other. This will give it a much more organic feel. Now, once you have the thick webbings in place, take the glue between your fingers, aerate it until you see very fine strands appear, and then open your fingers and close them over the entire base and cocoons. This will create very fine strands and it'll stretch over the thicker ones that you've made, creating a very spidery looking web. Do this again and again and again and again till you get a thick layer of fine strands. Try and go around the entire cocoons and then back to the base. This will make it seem as if the spider took the time to stick the cocoons to each other before sticking them to the base, which makes them feel very real. Now, once you've done the fine web phase, go back and give it another layer of thicker strands and another layer of fine strands, and again going over it till you get a very tangled web, which looks very real. Now, once the web is in place, I take these tiny skulls that I got off of Green Stuff World, and I just stick them in some empty spaces between the webs. This makes the base look as if the spiders left some leftover hero in their last feeding session, and make them seem a lot more sinister than they otherwise would. Once the skulls are in place, I give the entire base another layer of webbing, going over the skulls to make it seem as if they have been there for a long, long time. And now everything is basically done and they're ready to be used in game. Now all that you need to do is get your friends, some spiders, some sinister music, and basically have a good time. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe, and I hope to see you all here next time. Till then, happy gaming!